Big shout out today to UC Resolution for sponsoring Inside the Sale with Rob Shade. UC Resolution specializes in networking, collaboration, and unified communication, helping organizations integrate their data, networks, and communication systems seamlessly. UCResolution.com. We make technology accessible.
Hello,
Hey, I'm looking for Rachel.
this is Rachel.
Hey, Rachel, just looking to grab a little bit of your time today. Do you have a few moments?
I'm in a meeting right now.
No, I totally understand. How about if we schedule a little time to talk? How does Tuesday look?
What's this about?
Well, I just wanted to walk you through Inside the Sale and talk a little bit about our company and how I can help.
No, I'm really not interested. And you know what? I will actually never buy from your company.
Welcome back to Inside the Sale. I'm Rob Shade. This is the podcast where we dive deep into the stories, the strategies, the successes, this ever-changing world that we call sales. And so today I've got a really exciting guest, Rachel. She's been in the IT consulting world for I don't want to say a long time because that always has connotations of like you're old. But so again, not saying that about Rachel today, but she's been there and she's seen it. She's seen the real things that are happening today. She's seen those big sales. And what excited me about interviewing Rachel today was we talked about, some of these really large enterprise sales that she was involved in. And so Rachel, welcome.
Thanks. You really like the sound effects, don't you?
I mean, yeah, they're kind of fun. I mean, without a little fun, it's work.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I am. So, Rachel, really excited to have you. I guess I've said that 16 times. So, Rachel, why don't you tell me a little bit how you got in sales, what your journey's been so far, and let's just kind of dive in.
Right, yeah. So how does anyone get into sales, I guess? I guess for me, it really did start right after college. I had this big, unrealistic expectation that I was just going to come right out and I was going to put these resumes out and that my resume was going to be so strong because of my college degree that I was going to, just get a ton of different job offers. And I was really looking around my degree, which was communications. So I was looking at PR, marketing, and I was looking and I sent a ton of resumes out. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get, 6, 7 interviews back and I'm just going to be able to pick which one. And I was going to do this, this pros and cons list and have this chart of all the things that I was going to be doing. And then I would pick a job and there you go. I would just, it was just going to happen. Right.
Why not? Optimism.
So I started freaking out a little bit because, I was living at home with my parents and, I wanted to get out. And so I actually took a job in retail first, which surprisingly, I really didn't mind all that much. Nothing against retail, of course, right? But, working face to face with customers, I think everyone should have to do it. You need to look people in the eye and actually see, what their problem is and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that was a really good learning lesson for me early on.
Well, you're not wrong about that. I mean, I actually started in retail as well. So there was kind of this element of being able to do face to face and really talking with people. Like a lot of times they would bring a problem and all of a sudden, I had to like solve it in real time.
Right, exactly.
So what was after that?
Actually, I think I lucked out. I had a friend that was working for a major VAR. Sorry. Do you think everyone knows what a VAR is?
It might be kind of worth it to explain it. We're going to go through a lot of different kind of sales and a lot of different verticals, a lot of different markets. So I think it would be worth it to just go ahead and say what it is.
Yeah, so a VAR is a value-added reseller, and you hear that a lot when you're working with original equipment manufacturers, OEMs. There really are a lot of acronyms in our profession.
There really are.
But basically, what a VAR does is it adds services on top of what it's selling. So I get this job and, my first day I go in there and, I've got my nice little business suit on and I feel all like high powered. And so, I'm like, I'm going to have a corner office by the end of the week. I mean, not really, right? But just the things that go through your mind. And so I get there and they take me down into this little windowless dungeon. Again, it wasn't, I'm being funny, I suppose. But
yeah, I mean, that sounds like sales.
Yeah, tell me about it. But really, it was just this row and row of cubicles, and I see my friend kind of sitting in one of these cubicles, and they nod to me, and then I'm sat down and I get my own cubicle, and I get like, 10 minutes of training on how to cold call, and I get the script, and it was like, here you go at it.
And so, how did it go? Like, what worked? What didn't work? I mean, you're obviously still here in sales, so something happened, right?
Well, I can tell you the first thing that I did is I scrapped that script pretty darn quick, because I think scripts have their place. Don't get me wrong, but it was like after a couple days of just like doing the same thing, saying the same thing, it just wasn't me, and it wasn't honest, and it just didn't feel right. So I actually came up with my own little pitch. Just kept working it and working it, and I think, yeah, there's a little sense of competition in me that really drove me to do that, but I think what was nice was that I just started talking with people, asking them questions. People would say, "Oh, we're good," and I'm just like, "Okay, well, good. What does that look like? What does that look like? Good." Or sometimes that would work. And see, that's the big key that I found was that like sometimes it worked, sometimes it totally didn't work, and so you just can't sweat that.
Well, I think you're right there. I've had a joke in sales for a long time that everything works 2% of the time. You just got to find all of those 2% and add them up.
Yeah, it can be like that, and so I just kept at it.
Well, and that's good, right? That's the key. So I assume you made it out of the dungeon. You made it out of the call queues, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you found your success in there. What did that look like, and where did that transition?
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, I was kidding about the dungeon, of course, but it does make for a good image, right? I mean, you do have to kind of climb your way out sometimes, and if you can, you can. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people that just couldn't do it, and they didn't make it out. I don't know, I know you really want to get to the what's going on in sales, but like sometimes I don't know that you can actually train those people up. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see if you're going to be able to find really success stories of people who clawed their way up through sales. But anyways, yeah. So I started setting a lot of appointments, which was great. I think the key for me was just treating people like people, listening to their problems. And, sometimes they hung up on me. And so I started setting a lot of appointments, and I had a manager approach me and say, "Hey, what about sales?" And moving up and kind of carrying the quota and all that. So I started talking to some of the other salespeople, and they joked with me about how, well, great, I missed my son's baseball game because I had this deal closing, and kind of the fear of it all, right? You're going to just be moving all the time, taking calls all the time, and so. But I ended up doing that, and I was given a small book of business, and I sold my first deal within about 3 months, which was great. So
Yeah, that is great. I mean, 3 months. Is that a normal sales cycle for you?
it wasn't then. The average sales cycle back then was about 5 to 6 months. Where I'm at now, especially with the more complex, larger deals, those can take up to a year, year and a half. So I have to have a lot of those in my pipeline.
Sure, sure. Well, would you just mind giving us a kind of quick high-level overview of what you're doing now, what industry maybe, and what your focus is?
Like I mentioned, a VAR, a value-added reseller. And, largely what we do is we look at the network side. That's my focus. So I come in and look at, how is data moving around your company, and then ultimately where is it going to land, right? So that means all the way from coming into your environment, the access points, and then all the security around that as well. And so not only that, like I'm focused on hardware, but there's been a really big push the last couple of years to focus on what we call managed services as well. That means we're going to come alongside you, and we're actually going to do resolution, and we're going to be taking incidents coming in and then helping the customer. So it's not just a day zero design. It's not just a day one implementation, set it up and here you go. But it's really then getting to that point with the customer where you're saying, we're going to manage it for you as well. So that's, I think, at a high level. And the funny thing is, like, I mean, I just did a quick search, and there's over 20,000 VARs in the United States alone.
Wow, 20,000. That's incredible. I actually didn't know that. So, so with that, like, it sounds like you would have a lot of competition. What does that look like? Maybe walk us through. Could you walk us through one of your bigger sales, and kind of what was the key to the sales? What were your differentiators, and ultimately why you won?
Sure. So I had a customer that was kind of reaching the end of life on their equipment, and so I'll just say really quickly, one of the things that we talk about in at my company is we talk about the life cycle as well. So every product out there has a certain life cycle. And so like think about your car when you first bought it, it's got the new car smell, and then 2 years later it's got the soccer feet smell. And so the life cycle of that car, now that doesn't mean that that car is over or not, right? But it's just going to be reaching a point where it's going to start needing things, maybe the new brakes, maybe a new muffler, right? Stuff like that. Well, maybe not after 2 years, but you see the point. And so what we do is we kind of track life cycle on a lot of this network equipment. And so I actually had a customer that I was working with that was nearing that end of the life cycle of their current equipment and was reaching a refresh point. And so I really came alongside of them, and luckily I was early in the conversation, and this ended up being a multi-million-dollar refresh for them. But I was early enough in the conversation where I was able to really figure out what direction they were going and make some recommendations on where I felt they would be for best fit for the OEM, the manufacturer. And then I was able to bring in those manufacturers for the customer. So I was in early enough to be really in a position to guide them. And I think that was really key and critical for the sale.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, just being in there early is really a great thing. So I assume that boils down to a lot of relationships. Were there any differentiators that your actual company had that strengthened your sale?
Yeah, I do think that company size and volume does make a difference, right? Being able to have a company that is large enough to sell repeatedly the things that you do does get you a bigger reputation among the OEM community, and then also with your customers. But I also like to believe that I was a big differentiator in that sale, right? Like you mentioned, the relationships. I had really close relationships there, and what does that mean to me? Well, it means that I was bringing value to my customers. It's not like it's funny because I think there's often a misconception that in sales that relationship means, hey buddy, how you doing? You see this the 49ers won this week, or the Browns, and there's an element to that for sure. But I think really what a relationship to me is that I've brought something to my customer that they need, that they don't actually have. And those are relationships that I can come and they'll pick up my call because they know I'm not just calling to fluff them. So I do think that in that sale and in a lot of the sales I've been involved in, the differentiator that I'm bringing is that I'm bringing that value over and over and over to them.
Wow, that's incredible. And I wish that a lot more companies would look at it that way, because the salesperson is a value in and of themselves, and it has to be like what you just mentioned. If you're bringing the right thing to your customer, if you're thinking about it, and the company's supporting you, and your company's supporting you in that, it is magic.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you, and thankfully, I've been at organizations that have supported me largely, right, because sales is this up and down. But if organizations are just looking for the up and they're not really there to support the salesperson when things are good down, then the organization is really going to miss a lot of what's going on in the market, because it's not always the salesperson's fault, right? You can see that some salespeople, they if they're not generating the right leads, if they're not generating the right sales, then yeah, you've got a salesperson issue. But there's also kind of this cyclical thing that happens in sales cycles, and the way the product is fluctuating in the market and pricing also goes into that. But ultimately, yes, I do think if the salesperson is supported by the organization, and I've been in an organization where they weren't, and it was horrible. Like it was this feeling of, it was almost like this kind of Orwellian feeling where, this big brother is constantly watching you and constantly grinding on you. And even though you brought in a big sale one day, if you didn't bring in another sale of that same size in 2 days, or, a week or a month later, like you were out, and you were felt to me horrible. So I do think that, yeah, luckily I've been in those situations where the organization looks at their overall health of sales in a longer term cycle and is not always freaking out, because those freak out environments are horrible to be in.
Yeah, they are. I've actually been in them as well. And, really to me, when I see sales leadership freaking out, it's actually more of an indicator of the overall health of the company, right? Because it means that something's going on at the top, and they're putting that pressure down because that's all they know. But in reality, right, it's a whole lot of other things that go into it. It's the offer, it's the market, it's the pricing, right? And yeah, it's the salespeople sometimes too.
That's exactly right.
So What else do you think in your career has really helped you propel to where you're at? I know it's easy for me to say because I know a little bit more about you and I know more kind of the clients and the customers that you've sold to, and they are large enterprise. Everybody would recognize these names. But what has helped you do that? What makes Rachel unique?
So I guess you're only going to ask the easy questions on this show, right? But yeah, I think you do have to have a combination of a couple things. One of them is you do have to have a technical knowledge, right? Not super deep. You don't want that when you're selling because it can actually get in the way. You could actually trigger things that didn't need to even be discussed or will never ever come up. And so but you have to be able to speak the language. And the other thing I think for me that really sets me apart is that I had an uncle years ago that he kind of jokingly said, if you have to ask somebody to trust you, you really can't be trusted. And so that's always stuck in the back of my mind. And I realized that, well, how else do you do it? And you do it by actually delivering what you say you're going to do. And so I'm not delivering, I'm in sales. But what I do is along that process, I'm making sure that what I'm selling is in alignment with what's actually going to be delivered. Because at the end of the day, big enterprise customers, they're going to force you to adhere to those contracts. They are going to want you to perform. And, sure, if it's not in the contract, that's one thing, but they'll make sure along that sales process that everything makes it into the contract. And so I just make sure that whatever we discuss that is really important to the customer makes it into that contract and that we can actually, as a company, deliver. And I think that's what's gained me the reputation in the industry is just being able to deliver what I'm actually talking about with my customers. And a lot of that, again, comes from knowledge. And it comes from a personal inner ethic. And I just don't ever ask anybody to trust me. Instead, I show them that trust.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's awesome. That actually is really awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. So I just want to ask you one last question. Hopefully this is going to be kind of a fun question. Was there a sale that you flubbed in your career that you learned a ton from?
Oh, wow, this is going to be kind of hard. It's almost like one of those questions in the interview. It's like, well, what's your biggest weakness and how did you overcome it? But yeah, the truth is, yeah, I actually was working with a customer one time and I was so sure that I knew the direction that they were going. I was so sure what they were going to do that, I only really put one option in front of them. And, I didn't really think about if there was anybody else in the sale because I thought I had that relationship. I thought I had that connection with them. And when it came down for them to buy, I was just like, I was adamant. I told my boss, I was like, yep, they're buying. They're going to sign this week. And all of a sudden they came back to me and they said, nope, we're going a different direction. And I was like kind of shocked because I didn't realize that they had been vetting another vendor at the exact same time. And, and rightly so. And so now going into a lot of sales, I'm always kind of thinking, as we all should, right? They're not just looking at us. They're looking at other vendors. They're looking at other options. And so I better make sure that I'm sharp and I understand what they want. And if I do that, odds are I'm going to win more than not. So yeah, not necessarily a fun question, but I do appreciate the question because I did learn a lot from that in my career.
Well, and it's a great point that you bring up. It's like oftentimes we do fool ourselves into thinking like, I've got the only solution. I've got the only option. And it was, for me, I had that similar thing in my career where I had to kind of wake up and say, no, every customer really should be vetting multiple options. If they're doing what's best for their company, they should be looking at different solutions. And so, yeah, great. So again, just thank you so much for today and this time. And I'd love to have you back in the future if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah, sure. I would love that. This is fun. I mean, I really like what you're doing here. And I really hope that, that as this kind of progresses, you're going to really get to what the heart of sales is because there's a lot out there. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so, thank you. And that's really what my goal is, right? Is to just really get out there and really talk to people. And I know as I evolve in this and the industry keeps evolving, like I'm hoping to keep this really real time. And, so as I think about the keys for today, a couple of things that I really liked that you said were, that you hung in there. You figured it out. You didn't let the scripts bother you, and you found your way in your personality. The other key takeaway was value. Thinking about value can be really daunting because we don't always know. We're trying to fill in gaps of what the customer's thinking, and so sometimes that value is just filling in those gaps. And so that was really cool. But the other takeaway that I really liked too was just looking at a sale and saying, hey, I learned something from it, and I learned that my customer is probably looking at other options, and that I need to be really understanding of what they're doing and understanding of how we look in the industry. And so thank you again. Just really appreciate it. And I'm really excited. I've actually been getting a lot of response. The website insidethesale.com, insidethesale.com, no S there, is actually getting a lot of buzz, like whatever that means. But I've had several salespeople writing into me after they've heard about the show and they want to be interviewed, which really means to me that there's this kind of need for people to share what they've learned, to share what they've experienced, and learn from others. And that's exactly what Inside the Sale looks to do. So if you're interested, write to me at insidethesale.com. Again, I'm Rob Schade, and thank you.